Hey guys, tonight we begin with a peculiar little thread from history, one that's been tucked away in the dusty corners of medieval towns where shadows flicker and the past refuses to stay quiet. Imagine a world where ghosts were as real as the baker down the street and curses were blamed for everything from sour milk to a stubbed toe. It's a strange thought, isn't it? That people once lived in such certainty of spirits and hexes, weaving them into their daily lives like thread through a loom. And yet, there's something oddly comforting about their rituals, their stubborn belief in taming the unseen. So let's wander back to those foggy, candlelit streets and see how they handled their ghosts and curses. If you enjoy this kind of thing, maybe give a like or subscribe, but only if you feel like it. No pressure. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and settle in. Let's step into a world where the supernatural wasn't just a story, it was a neighbour. You wake up in medieval Europe, let's say around 1350, in a small market town somewhere in England or maybe the Low Countries. The air smells of wood smoke and damp straw. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a lumpy mattress stuffed with straw, and the blanket scratches like it's plotting revenge. Outside, the town is stirring. Chickens cluck, a cartwheel creaks, and someone's shouting about fresh eels. But there's something else in the air, something heavier. It's the weight of belief, the certainty that the world is alive with forces you can't see. Ghosts linger in the churchyard. Curses hide in jealous glances. And everyone, from the blacksmith to the priest, knows it. You pull on your wool tunic, step into the muddy street, and notice the way people move. They're cautious not just of thieves or stray dogs, but of something less tangible. A woman crosses herself as she passes the old oak at the edge of town. A man mutters a charm under his breath while shoeing a horse. This is a world where the line between the living and the dead is as thin as a spider's web, and you're about to learn how they kept it from snapping. Your eyes flutter open, the dim light of dawn seeping through the cracks of a wooden shutter. It's 1350, and you're in a small medieval town, perhaps tucked away in the rolling hills of England or the misty flats of the Low Countries. The air is sharp with the scent of wood smoke, damp straw, and something faintly sour, maybe the remnants of last night's stew. Your bed is a rough affair, a sack stuffed with straw that rustles like dry leaves every time you shift. The blanket, woven from coarse wool, itches against your skin as if it's daring you to complain. You rise, your bare feet meeting the cold earth floor, and pull on a tunic that smells faintly of sweat and hearth. Stepping outside, the town greets you with a chorus of small sounds. The cluck of hens scavenging in the mud, the groan of a cartwheel rolling down the street, a vendor's distant cry about eels so fresh they might swim away. But beneath it all, there's a hum, a subtle tension that you feel more than hear. It's the pulse of a world where the supernatural isn't a tale for children. It's as real as the cobblestones under your feet. Ghosts linger in the corners of every alley. Curses ride on whispered words or envious glances. You see it in the way a woman hurries past a gnarled tree, her fingers brushing a cross necklace, or how a man spits thrice over his shoulder before entering his workshop. This is a place where the unseen is a neighbour and you're learning to live with it. You pause by a well, its wooden bucket slick with moss, and catch your reflection in the water. The face staring back feels foreign, shaped by a world where every creak of a floorboard might be a spirit, every sour harvest a hex. The townsfolk don't question these things, they act. A charm tucked into a pocket, a prayer muttered at dusk, a candle lit for no reason at all. These are their tools, as practical as a hammer or a plough. You dip your hands into the water, the cold biting your skin, and feel the weight of their belief settle over you like a cloak. It's not fear, not exactly. It's respect, the kind you give a river that could flood, or a fire that could warm. Let's start with ghosts, because in a medieval town they were everywhere. You'd think death would be the end of it. Life was hard enough, what with the plague and the occasional Viking raid. But no, the dead had a habit of sticking around. The churchyard was the favourite haunt, pun intended. It wasn't just a place to bury bodies, it was a social hub for the departed. People believed the dead lingered there, especially if they died with unfinished business, like a debt unpaid or a grudge unburied. You walk to the church, a squat stone building with a bell that rings too often for comfort. The graveyard is crowded, not with people, but with stories. There's the tale of old Agnes, who died cursing the miller for cheating her on flour. Now, they say, her shadow flickers near the mill at dusk, and the wheel jams for no reason. The townsfolk don't call her a ghost, though. They call her a revenant, a word that sounds like it's trying to crawl out of your throat. To deal with Agnes, the priest sprinkles holy water on the mill and says a mass for her soul. It doesn't work, but everyone feels better for trying. Ghosts weren't always malicious, mind you. Sometimes they were just sad, like the merchant who died before telling his wife where he hid the silver. You hear whispers that his spirit rattles the shutters of his old house, pointing to a loose floorboard. The widow digs it up, finds the coins, and pays for a proper burial. Problem solved. The medieval solution to ghosts was practical. Give them what they want. A mass, a prayer, maybe a candle lit in their name. It was like bribing a grumpy neighbour to quiet down. You make your way to the church, its stone walls squat and solid, like a stubborn old man refusing to budge. The bell tolls, a low clang that seems to sink into the earth, calling the living to prayer and the dead to listen. The churchyard is a patchwork of graves, some marked with rough stones, others with wooden crosses already leaning from the wind. Weeds tangle around them, but there's a care here, a sense that these plots are tended, not abandoned. This is where the ghosts linger, or so the townsfolk say, their voices dropping to whispers when they speak of it. You hear about old Agnes again, her name passed around like a coin worn smooth. She was a widow, sharp-tongued and sharper-eyed, who swore the miller cheated her on a sack of flour. When she died, coughing and bitter, her curse stuck to the mill like damp rot. Now, they say, her shadow dances near the mill pond at twilight, and the wheel stutters when no one's looking. The miller, a burly man with flour-dusted hands, tried to laugh it off at first, but the jams kept coming, and his customers started whispering. So he called the priest, who arrived with a vial of holy water and a book of prayers heavier than a sack of grain. You watch the priest now, his robes flapping as he sprinkles water over the mill's threshold. His Latin is a soothing drone, like bees in summer, but the miller's face tells you he's not convinced. The mass for Agnes's soul cost him a week's earnings, and still the wheel creaks. You overhear a woman at the market say it's because Agnes wanted an apology, not a prayer. The miller won't give one, he's too proud, but he leaves a loaf of bread by the pond some nights, hoping it's enough. It's a strange kind of diplomacy, this bargaining with the dead, but it's as common here as haggling over turnips. Not all ghosts are as stubborn as Agnes. You learn of a tailor who died owing a debt to a friend. His spirit rattled the friend's shutters until the man dug under the tailor's old hearth and found a pouch of coins. The debt was paid, a mass was said, and the shutters went quiet. The townsfolk nod at the story, satisfied. Ghosts, they believe, are like puzzles. Solve their grievance, and they'll leave you be. You trace a finger along a gravestone, its edges softened by rain, and wonder what puzzles these silent neighbours hold. Now let's talk about curses, because they were trickier. You're walking through the market, where stalls sell everything from turnips to questionable relics. A woman glares at you. Maybe you bumped her basket, maybe she just doesn't like your face. Either way, you feel a prickle on your neck. That's the evil eye, or so they say. In medieval towns, a curse could be as simple as a look, as deliberate as a muttered hex, or as accidental as praising someone's cow too much. Envy was the spark, and everyone was flammable. You notice the baker's wife tying a red thread around her son's wrist. It's not just decoration, it's protection. Red was thought to ward off the evil eye, like a shield made of yarn. If the boy falls ill later, they'll blame that glare from the market. The cure? A mix of prayer and practicality. The priest might recite a psalm, but the wise woman down the lane has her own methods. A bowl of water, a drop of oil, a muttered charm. If the oil scatters, the curse is real. If it holds together, you're safe. It's not exactly science, but it's oddly soothing, like a recipe for soup you don't quite understand but trust anyway. Curses weren't just personal. A bad harvest, a sick cow, a fire in the barn, someone was to blame. You hear about a farmer who swears his neighbour hexed his pigs. The solution? A pilgrimage to a saint's shrine, maybe saint. Anthony's, to beg for the curse to lift. Or if the farmer's feeling less pious, he might bury a charm under the neighbour's doorstep. A bundle of herbs, a written prayer, or in extreme cases, a toad's foot. Don't ask. The logic was simple. Fight magic with magic, like throwing mud at mud to see what sticks. The market is alive now, a tangle of voices and smells. Fresh bread, rotting fish, the sharp tang of vinegar. You weave through the stalls, dodging a boy chasing a stray goose. When you feel it, a stare, heavy as a stone. It's a woman, her eyes narrowed, her basket of eggs clutched tight. Maybe you brushed her arm, maybe she just doesn't like strangers, but the prickle on your neck tells you this is no ordinary glance. This is the evil eye, a curse as old as envy itself. In this town, a look can sour milk, sicken a child, or turn a good day rotten. You see the baker's wife nearby, her hands deft as she ties a red thread around her son's chubby wrist. The thread is knotted 7 times, each knot a ward against harm. She catches your eye and smiles, but it's a guarded smile, the kind that says she's seen too many glares to trust a stranger's gaze. Red is everywhere here. Ribbons in hair, cords on door frames, even a scrap of cloth pinned to a cow's ear. It's the colour of defiance, a shield against the jealousy that festers in tight-knit towns like this one. If the boy falls ill, they'll know the curse was real. You follow the baker's wife to a store where an old woman, her face creased like parchment, sells charms. She's not Marjorie, the cunning woman, but she's cut from the same cloth. She hands over a small pouch of dried herbs, rue, fennel, a pinch of salt, and instructs the wife to burn them at midnight, reciting a charm that's half prayer, half riddle. You lean closer, catching the words, "Eye of envy, turn away, light of grace, here to stay." It's poetry in its way, and you feel its rhythm settle into your bones. Curses aren't just personal grudges. You overhear a farmer muttering about his barley, blighted despite a good spring. He blames a neighbour who praised the crop too loudly. Praise in this world can be as dangerous as a glare. The farmer's wife is already planning a pilgrimage to Saint Cuthbert's shrine, a day's walk away, to beg for the curse's end. Meanwhile, the farmer buries a bundle of thorns under the neighbour's fence, a charm to turn the hex back. It's a quiet war, fought with whispers and roots, and you marvel at its intricacy, the way every misfortune has a story and every story a solution. You pause by the church again, because it's the heart of this ghost and curse business. The church was the medieval equivalent of a one-stop shop for supernatural problems. Got a ghost? Call a priest. Got a curse? Call a priest. The priest might not solve it, but he'd at least make it official. Exorcisms were rare, reserved for the truly possessed, but blessings were handed out like bread at a feast. A sprinkle of holy water, a Latin prayer, and maybe a relic waved in your direction. Suddenly, the world felt less haunted. But the church wasn't always the answer. You hear grumbling from the alehouse. The priest charges for masses, and not everyone can afford to soothe a restless spirit. So the townsfolk turn to other experts, the cunning folk. These were the wise women and men who knew the old ways. Herbs, charms, and a knack for reading omens. They weren't witches, mind you. Witches were what you called them when you wanted them burned. Cunning folk were respectable, or at least tolerated, because they filled the gaps the church couldn't. You meet one, a woman named Marjorie, who lives in a cottage that smells of lavender and suspicion. She's got a charm for everything. A sprig of rosemary for ghosts, a stone with a hole for curses. She tells you to wear an amulet, a scrap of parchment with a psalm scribbled on it. It's not fancy, but it's comforting, like a warm blanket for your soul. Marjorie's not competing with the priest. She's just cheaper and less judgmental. You return to the church, its shadow long in the afternoon light. The building feels like the town's anchor, its stones worn smooth by centuries of hands seeking solace. Inside, the air is cool and heavy with the scent of wax and incense. A priest moves slowly, lighting candles at the altar, his murmurs blending with the creak of pews. The church is the first line of defense against the supernatural, a fortress of faith where ghosts and curses are met with scripture and sacrament. But it's not a perfect shield, and you sense the townsfolk know it. You watch a woman approach the priest, her hands twisting a frayed shawl. Her cow stopped giving milk, and she's sure it's a curse. The priest nods, his face kind but tired, and offers a blessing for a small fee, a candle's worth of coin. He sprinkles holy water from a silver aspergillum, the drops catching the light like tiny prayers. The woman leaves, clutching a scrap of parchment with a psalm written in shaky ink. It's Psalm 91, the one about dwelling in the shelter of the Most High, and she'll tuck it under the cow's manger tonight. You wonder if it'll work, but you see the relief in her shoulders, the way belief alone lightens her step. The church's power isn't just in its rituals, it's in its authority. A ghost might ignore a farmer's plea, but a priest's Latin carries weight, or so they hope. You hear about a merchant's house plagued by footsteps in the attic. The priest performed a minor exorcism, waving a relic, a knucklebone said to be St. Margaret's, while chanting prayers. The footsteps stopped, or so the merchant claims, though his wife still avoids the attic. The relic cost them a month's profit, and you catch a grumble from the alehouse later. The saint's bone works, but the priest's purse works better. That's where the cunning folk come in. You pass Marjorie's cottage again, its door ajar, the smell of lavender drifting out. She's brewing something, a tea, a potion, it's hard to tell. A young man sits by her hearth, his face pale. His crops failed, and the priest's prayers didn't help. Marjorie hands him a charm, a stone with a natural hole threaded on a cord. "Wear it," she says, and plant a sprig of hazel by the field's edge. Her voice is calm, her words plain, and you see the man's shoulders relax. Marjorie's magic is cheaper than the church's, and her judgment lighter. She's not a rival to the priest. She's a neighbour, filling the cracks in a world where faith alone isn't always enough. As night falls, you join the townsfolk for a festival. It's All Hallows' Eve, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. The town lights bonfires, not for warmth, but to guide the dead back where they belong. You see people leaving out bread and ale for wandering spirits, a kind of cosmic hospitality. It's practical, really. If the ghosts are fed, they won't cause trouble. There's a quiet humour in it, like leaving cookies for a burglar in hopes he'll just take them and leave. The festival isn't all sombre. There's dancing, singing, and a lot of ale. But even here, the supernatural is close. A storyteller spins a tale about a cursed well that poisoned a village until a saint blessed it. The moral? Always check your water source and maybe say a prayer while you're at it. The crowd laughs, but they cross themselves too. Belief and skepticism live side by side, like neighbours who don't quite trust each other but share a fence. You notice the rituals are communal. A ghost isn't just your problem, it's the town's. A curse doesn't just hex you, it threatens the harvest, the livestock, the whole fragile balance of life. So everyone pitches in, prayers, charms, even a shared pilgrimage to a shrine. It's less about fear and more about control, a way to feel like you're not at the mercy of the unseen. Dusk settles over the town, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. You join the crowd gathering in the square for All Hallows' Eve, the night when the dead are closest. Bonfires crackle, their flames licking the air, not for warmth, but for guidance. The townsfolk believe the fires light the way for wandering spirits, urging them back to their graves before dawn. You see plates of bread and cups of ale left on doorsteps, offerings for the dead who might pass by. It's a kind of cosmic courtesy, like leaving a light on for a guest you hope won't stay. The festival is quiet but alive, a blend of reverence and revelry. You watch a group of children weave through the crowd, their faces smudged with ash from the fires. They're singing a song, its words half forgotten, about a ghost who guards the harvest. The tune is simple, almost a chant, and you feel it hum in your chest. Nearby, a man carves turnips into lanterns, their hollowed faces grinning with candlelight. They're not just decorations, they're wards, meant to scare off spirits with their grotesque glow. You smile at the ingenuity, the way fear is shaped into something you can hold. A storyteller steps into the firelight, his voice low and steady. He tells of a cursed well in a neighbouring village, its water bitter until a saint's relic was dropped into its depths. The crowd listens, some nodding, others crossing themselves. There's a lesson buried in the tale. Check your wells, trust the saints. But there's humour too, a wry nod to the absurdity of a world where even water can turn traitor. You notice the way the story binds the crowd, their faces softened by the fire's glow. This is their strength, you realise, not in banishing the supernatural, but in sharing it, making it a story they all own. The rituals are communal, woven into the town's fabric. A ghost in one house is everyone's problem, a curse on one field a threat to all. You see neighbours exchanging charms, herbs, ribbons, a whispered prayer, and offering to pray for each other's dead. It's less about fear and more about balance, a way to keep the world spinning despite its shadows. You join the dance, your feet clumsy on the uneven ground, and feel the town's pulse beneath you, steady as a heartbeat. Here's the ironic part, and you can almost hear the past chuckling at itself. For all their rituals, their holy water and red threads, the medieval folk weren't that different from us. They wanted order in a chaotic world, answers to questions no one could answer. A ghost was a story to explain a creaking floorboard. A curse was a way to make sense of bad luck. They weren't fools, they were human, stitching together a worldview with the tools they had: faith, folklore, and a stubborn refusal to give up. You wander back to your straw bed, the town quiet now except for the distant hoot of an owl. The rituals worked in a way, not because they banished every ghost or broke every curse, but because they gave people something to do. A prayer, a charm, a bonfire. These were acts of defiance against the dark. And isn't that what we all do, in our own way? Build little rituals to keep the unknown at bay? As the fires burn low, you wander back toward your bed, the town's lights fading behind you. The irony of this world settles over you like dust. The medieval folk, with their charms and prayers, weren't so different from us. They craved order, a way to make sense of a world that refused to behave. A ghost was an explanation for a door that swung open on its own. A curse was a reason for a crop that failed despite rain and care. They weren't naive. They were practical, building a framework of belief to hold their lives together. You pass the churchyard one last time, its graves quiet now, the ghosts tucked away. The townsfolk's rituals were acts of defiance, small but stubborn. A red thread, a holy water sprinkle, a bonfire's glow. These were their weapons against the dark, as much about hope as protection. You think of Marjorie's charms, Godwin's lantern, the baker's wife knotting her son's thread. Each act was a claim. We're here, we're staying, and the unseen won't drive us out. There's a humour in it, dry as autumn leaves. They knew their rituals might not work, that Agnes's shadow might still flicker by the mill, that the evil eye might strike despite the red. But they did them anyway, because doing nothing was worse. You feel a kinship with them, a recognition of that human itch to act, to build something, anything, against the unknown. Their world was haunted, but so is ours in its way. We just call our ghosts by different names. You reach your door, the straw bed waiting, its rustle a familiar sound now. The town stories linger, their weight comforting, like a hand on your shoulder. You lie down, the night soft around you, and let the medieval world fade. Their ghosts and curses were theirs to tame, and they did it with a quiet grace you can't help but admire. Sleep beckons, gentle as a prayer, and you drift toward it, the town's lanterns glowing in your mind. You're drifting now, the straw beneath you softer than it was this morning, as if the day's stories have padded it with their weight. The medieval town is quiet, save for that owl, still hooting somewhere beyond the shuttered window. But sleep doesn't come easy here, not because of the lumpy mattress, but because the night belongs to the unseen. In this world, darkness isn't just the absence of light, it's a curtain behind which ghosts and curses play their silent games. And the townsfolk, practical as ever, have ways to keep watch. You imagine yourself rising, pulling on a cloak against the chill, and stepping into the street. The town feels different now, the market stalls empty, the church bell silent. A faint mist curls around the cobblestones, and you notice a flicker of light near the town gate. It's the watchman, an old man named Godwin, carrying a lantern and a staff. His job isn't just to spot thieves or stray wolves, it's to keep an eye on the supernatural. Ghosts, they say, are boldest at midnight, and curses creep under moonlight. Godwin mutters a prayer as he walks, the words half Latin, half local dialect, like a recipe only he understands. You follow him, keeping to the shadows. He pauses by the churchyard, where the graves seem to hum with their own quiet life. The townsfolk believe that at certain hours, the dead stir, not to harm, but to remind. A forgotten grave, an unpaid debt, a promise broken, these pull spirits back like a tide. Godwin's lantern swings low, casting light on a crooked headstone. He kneels, not out of fear, but habit, and whispers a quick blessing. It's not much, but it's enough to settle the restless, like a lullaby for the earth itself. The straw beneath you crinkles as you shift, the night's chill seeping through the thin walls of your imagined medieval home. The owl's hoot has faded, but the silence isn't empty. It's thick with the weight of a world that never quite sleeps. You pull your cloak tighter and step back into the misty streets, following Godwin, the watchman, whose lantern sways like a tiny star against the dark. His steps are slow, deliberate, as if he's pacing out a rhythm older than the town itself. In this hour, the medieval folk believed the veil between worlds was gossamer thin, and Godwin's job was to patrol that boundary, armed with nothing but a staff, a prayer, and a stubborn refusal to be afraid. You notice the way he scans the shadows, not with fear, but with the weary focus of a man who's seen too many unexplained things to doubt them. The townsfolk rely on him, not just to keep out bandits, but to mind the spirits that slip through the cracks of the night. You pass a row of shuttered houses, their wooden beams warped by years of rain and worry. Godwin pauses at one, where a faint scratching comes from within. He doesn't knock. He knows better. Instead, he traces a cross in the air with his finger, murmuring a charm that sounds like it's been passed down since the Romans left. The scratching stops, or maybe it never was. In this world, certainty is a luxury. Further along, you reach the town's edge, where the road dissolves into a muddy track leading to the forest. Godwin stops by a gnarled tree, its branches twisted like fingers clutching at the sky. The townsfolk call it the Witch's Oak, though no one can agree on why. Some say a woman was hanged there for cursing a lord's crops. Others say it's just where the dead like to linger, drawn to its roots like moths to a flame. Godwin sets his lantern down and pulls a small iron nail from his pouch. He drives it into the ground at the tree's base, a quiet act of defiance against whatever might be listening. It's not much, but it's enough to keep the night at bay, like a lock on a door that's never quite shut. You linger by the oak, feeling the weight of stories it holds. The medieval mind didn't see the supernatural as separate from the world. It was woven into it, like damp into wood. Godwin's rituals, his muttered prayers and scattered crumbs, were less about banishing ghosts and more about living with them. You imagine him doing this every night, a solitary figure stitching the town's fears into something manageable. As he moves on, you follow, the mist curling around your ankles like a cat. Godwin's rounds take him past the alehouse, where a faint glow spills from a crack in the door. You peer inside and see a handful of folk, not drinking, but gathered around a table. They're crafting charms, a nightly ritual for some. There's a woman threading beads onto a cord, each one etched with a rune older than the church's cornerstone. A man carves a small wooden disc, muttering about a priest passing his daughter's cradle at dusk, which could mean a curse if he's not careful. The charms are simple, herbs, stones, scraps of scripture, but they're the town's armour against the night. You listen as they share stories, their voices low and rhythmic, like a song you've always known. One tells of a ghost that haunted the bridge until a charm of rowan wood was hung from its beams. Another speaks of a curse lifted by burying a mirror at a crossroads, trapping the evil eye in its own reflection. There's a dry humour in their tales, a kind of, well, what can you do? Shrug that makes the supernatural feel less like a threat and more like a neighbour who's always late with rent. The charms aren't just for protection, they're for peace of mind. You see a young woman tuck a sprig of vervain into her sleeve, her fingers trembling slightly. She's new to the town, married to a tanner who's been ill. The wise woman Marjorie told her the vervain would keep curses at bay, and though she's not sure she believes it, she holds it like a lifeline. That's the magic of these rituals, you realise. Not that they work, but that they feel like they might. It's hope, woven into thread and twig. Back in the alehouse, the glow of a single candle paints the room in flickering gold. The group around the table is small but focused, their hands busy with the work of charm making. You sit quietly in the corner, watching as they weave protection into every knot and carve. There's a rhythm to it, a soft clatter of beads and the rustle of dried herbs, like a lullaby made solid. The woman with the rune-etched beads, Ellen, ties her cord with a precision that speaks of practice. Her fingers are calloused, her eyes tired, but there's a calm in her movements, as if this act alone holds the world together. You learn her story from the whispers around the table. Ellen's husband, a cooper, lost 3 barrels to rot last month, a sure sign of a curse. The priest blessed the workshop, but the rot returned, stubborn as a weed. So here she is, crafting a charm to hang above the door, a braid of nettle and yarrow, with a pebble smoothed by the river. The nettle stings evil away, she says, and the yarrow binds the charm to the earth. The pebble? That's just for luck, because even in a world of spirits, a little luck doesn't hurt. You smile at the practicality of it, the way they hedge their bets against the unknown. Across the table, a young man named Thomas carves his wooden disc with a knife so small it looks like a toy. He's muttering about the priest's shadow passing his daughter's cradle, a bad omen in a town where shadows carry weight. His charm is simple, a cross etched into the wood, smeared with a paste of crushed garlic and ash. Garlic for warding, ash for the dead. He'll hang it above the cradle, and if the child sleeps through the night, he'll call it a success. There's a quiet humour in his focus, a kind of better safe than sorry shrug that you're starting to recognise as the town's heartbeat. The group shares more stories, their voices a soothing hum. One speaks of a ghost that haunted a weaver's loom until a charm of braided wool was tucked into the frame. Another tells of a curse that soured a brewer's ale, lifted only when he poured a cup into the river as an offering. The tales are matter of fact, not sensational, as if ghosts and curses are just part of the weather, unpredictable but manageable with the right tools. You feel the warmth of their camaraderie, the way they lean into each other's stories, not out of fear, but a shared understanding that the night is long and the charms are small, but they're enough. The bell tolls again, a single low note that seems to sink into the earth. The witching hour, though they don't call it that here, is when the town feels most alive with the unseen. You're still trailing Godwin, his lantern a faint glow in the thickening mist. The stone cross at the forest's edge looms larger now, its edges softened by moss and moonlight. You notice carvings on it, runes maybe, or just scratches from 100 years of offerings. The cross isn't just a marker, it's a sentinel, standing guard where the tame world meets the wild. Godwin kneels again, his movements slow but sure. From his pouch he pulls a small vial of oil, blessed by the priest at Easter. He pours a drop onto the ground, where it glistens like a star fallen to earth. The oil is for the saints, he tells you, though you're not sure if he's speaking to you or the air. It's a gift to keep the holy ones watching, to ensure the dead don't wander too far. You wonder how many nights he's done this, how many drops of oil have soaked into this soil. There's a poetry in it, a quiet stubbornness that says the world can be tamed, one ritual at a time. You glance into the forest, where the trees seem to lean closer, their branches whispering secrets. The townsfolk say the woods are home to older spirits, ones that don't answer to the church or its crosses. Godwin doesn't linger here. He knows the limits of his lantern. But he scatters a handful of salt around the cross, a barrier against whatever might creep from the shadows. Salt, you learn, is as good as gold in this world, not for flavour, but for its power to purify. It's another piece of their practical magic, like locking a door you know won't hold, but feels better closed. As you stand there, you feel the hour's weight, the way it presses on the town like a held breath. The medieval folk didn't fear the dark. They respected it. They knew it held things they couldn't name, but they also knew how to meet it, with oil, with salt, with a prayer muttered into the mist. Godwin picks up his lantern and moves on, and you follow, drawn by the quiet strength of his routine. The bell tolls once, marking the deepest part of the night, what some call the witching hour, though no one here uses that term. It's just the hour when the world holds its breath. Godwin's lantern bobs toward the edge of town, where the fields meet the forest. You follow, the mist thicker now, clinging to your cloak like a second skin. There's a small shrine here, a stone cross weathered by centuries of rain. It's not grand, but it's powerful, a marker to keep the wild at bay, both the wolves in the woods and the spirits that roam with them. Godwin sets his lantern down and pulls a small pouch from his belt. Inside are crumbs of blessed bread, saved from the last mass. He scatters them at the base of the cross, an offering to the restless who might wander too far from the churchyard. You catch a glimpse of something in the mist, a shadow maybe, or just the trick of tired eyes. Godwin doesn't flinch. He's seen worse, or so his weathered face suggests. He mutters another prayer, this one shorter, and moves on. The shadow, if it was there, stays behind. You think about the stories you've heard today, the ghosts and curses that weave through this town like threads in a tapestry. There's a strange logic to it all, a balance. The living don't fight the dead, they negotiate. A charm, a prayer, a bit of bread left at a shrine. It's a contract, a way to coexist. And in the quiet of this hour, you see the beauty of it. A world where even the unknown can be reasoned with, if you know the right words. The sky is lightening now, not yet dawn, but the promise of it. Godwin's rounds are nearly done, and you follow him back to the town square. The mist is lifting, the air less heavy. You pass the church again, where a rooster crows, impatient for the sun. The town will wake soon, and with it the daily dance of life. Work, trade, gossip, and yes, the ever-present hum of the supernatural. You pause by the churchyard, where the graves are still, the ghosts settled for now. Godwin tips his lantern, dousing the flame, and gives you a nod, as if he's known you were there all along. His face is calm, not the calm of ignorance, but of someone who's walked these streets 1,000 nights and lived to see the morning. He heads home, and you turn back to your own bed, the straw welcoming now, the world softer. As you lie down, you carry the night with you, the lantern's glow, the charm's quiet power, the cross in the mist. The medieval folk knew something we've half forgotten, that the dark isn't empty, but it's not the enemy either. It's a place to meet the past, to bargain with it, to light a small flame and keep walking. And with that thought you feel sleep pulling you close, gentle as a charm. As you lie down, the world of medieval ghosts and curses fades. The town, with its creaking mills and flickering shadows, feels far away now. But there's something comforting in their stubborn belief, their quiet ingenuity. They faced the unseen with a mix of faith and cunning, and somehow they slept through the night. Maybe you can too. The sky is grey now, streaked with the first hints of dawn. The mist is thinning, revealing the town in soft focus. Rooftops, chimneys, the church's squat tower. Godwin's steps are slower, his shoulders hunched, but there's a lightness to him, as if the night's work has unburdened him. You pass the market square, where the stalls are still shuttered, but a stray dog sniffs at a pile of straw, hopeful for scraps. The air smells cleaner now, of dew and distant wood smoke, and you feel the town waking, stirring like a sleeper turning toward morning. You pause by the churchyard again, where the graves are silent, their stories tucked away for another night. Godwin stops at the church door, where a small bundle of herbs, rosemary maybe, or thyme, is tied to the handle. It's a charm left by someone who couldn't afford a mass but wanted the dead to know they're remembered. Godwin touches it lightly, as if to say, well done, and you realise this is the town's true magic. Not the charms themselves, but the care behind them. Every knot, every prayer, every nail in the ground is an act of love for a world that's half seen but wholly felt. As Godwin heads home, you linger in the square, watching the first rays of sun touch the cobblestones. The medieval folk face their ghosts and curses with a kind of quiet genius, a blend of faith and folklore that held their world together. They didn't need to understand the supernatural. They needed to live with it, to make it part of their days and nights. And in that, there's a strange comfort, a reminder that even the unknown can be met with a steady hand and a whispered word. You turn back to your bed, the straw waiting, the world soft and heavy with the promise of sleep. The town's rituals linger in your mind, their simplicity a kind of lullaby. You close your eyes, letting the dawn's light fade, and feel yourself slipping into rest, carried by the stories of a world that faced its fears with nothing but a lantern and a prayer. So, close your eyes. Let the fan hum, the darkness settle. The ghosts can wait. The curses can fade. For now, it's just you and the soft pull of sleep, carrying you away from the medieval town and into your own dreams. Good night. You wake in medieval Europe, stirred by the faint, ghostly light of dawn that slips through a narrow slit of a window high in the stone wall of the kitchen. The air is cool, almost damp, carrying the faint musk of earth and the lingering warmth of last night's fire. You're not nestled in some modern bed with soft sheets and a thermostat humming in the background. No, your mattress is a thin pallet of straw, tucked in a corner of this vast, cavernous room where the noble household's meals are born. The straw prickles through your rough woolen tunic, a subtle reminder that comfort is a privilege reserved for those upstairs, the ones who'll eat your food but never see your face. You shift, your back groaning from yesterday's endless hours hunched over pots and spits, and you let out a slow breath. Welcome to your life as a cook in a noble household somewhere around the year 1350. The kitchen is already whispering its demands. The massive hearth, a hulking beast of blackened stone, dominates one wall, its embers glowing faintly, like the memory of a dream you can't quite recall. The air is thick with the scents of wood smoke, dried herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters, and the faint tang of yesterday's pottage. A dish so humble it's practically a personality trait in this corner of the world. You rub your eyes, calloused from years of gripping knives and wrestling with dough, and take in the room. It's not a sleek, sterile kitchen of gleaming appliances. This is a battlefield of creation. Iron pots dangle from hooks, their bottoms scorched by countless fires. Wooden spoons, worn smooth by generations of hands, lean in a cracked clay jug, and the oak table, scarred and stained, stretches like a silent witness to every triumph and disaster of this hearth. You're the head cook, or perhaps an undercook if the household is grand enough to have a pecking order as rigid as the Lord's dining table. Either way, you're the one who keeps this castle fed. Lords, ladies, knights with mud-caked boots, servants who gossip like sparrows, and the occasional wandering minstrel who'll sing for a crust of bread, they all depend on you. It's a peculiar irony, isn't it? You're the linchpin of this household, the alchemist who turns raw grain and questionable meat into sustenance, yet you're invisible. The nobles will praise the feast, toast the Lord's generosity, and never spare a thought for the hands that shaped it. You've learned to live with that. Fame is for bards. You're here for the fire and the food. You swing your legs off the pallet, your bare feet meeting the cold stone floor. It's a shock, but a familiar one, like an old friend who's never quite welcome but always expected. You pull on your shoes, sturdy, shapeless things that smell faintly of grease, and wrap a linen apron around your waist. The kitchen is stirring now, as if it senses your wakefulness. A scullion, a gangly boy of maybe 12, is already at the hearth, poking at the embers with a stick. His efforts are earnest but clumsy, sending a shower of sparks that fizzle on the floor. You wince, making a mental note to teach him how to coax a fire without waking the entire castle. For now, though, you let him be. The boy's learning, and you remember being that young, that nervous, your hands trembling as you tried to please a cook who seemed to speak only in grunts and glares. Your mind is already turning to the day ahead, a mental ledger of tasks and risks. Breakfast must be ready soon. Bread and ale for the servants, something fancier for the Lord's table, perhaps cheese or cold meat if the pantry permits. The midday meal will be heartier, a pottage or stew to fill bellies before the afternoon's work. And tonight, well, tonight could be anything. A feast if the Lord's in a mood to impress. A simple supper if he's feeling frugal. You've heard whispers of a guest arriving, some cousin or knight with a taste for extravagance. That means pressure, the kind that settles in your shoulders like a sack of flour. You'll need to plan, to barter with the steward, to pray the hunters bring back game worth roasting. It's a dance, this job, and you've learned the steps by heart. You cross the kitchen, your footsteps soft against the stone, and pause by the table. It's littered with the remnants of yesterday's work. A few crumbs of rye bread, a smear of fat, a sprig of thyme that escaped the pot. You sweep them away with your hand, the motion automatic, and let your gaze drift to the pantry door. That's where the real work begins. The pantry is the household's heart, a cool, shadowed room of barrels and sacks, where wealth is measured not in coin but in grain, salt, and the rare, precious spices locked in a chest like jewels. You'll check it soon, take stock of what's there and what's not. The steward's been stingy lately, muttering about lean harvests and the Lord's lavish banquets. You'll have to charm him, maybe trade a bowl of your best pottage for an extra onion or two. It's a game you're good at, though you'd never admit it. For now, you turn to the hearth. The scullion's made progress. The fire is flickering now, a timid flame licking at the kindling. You kneel beside him, your knees creaking, and add a log of oak. The wood catches, sending a warm glow across the stone. You adjust it with a poker, watching the flames settle into a steady rhythm. Fire is your ally, your adversary, your constant companion. You've spent years learning its moods, how it roars with dry wood, sulks with damp, betrays you with a sudden flare that turns a roast to ash. There's no dial to turn, no button to press. Just you, the flames, and a lifetime of singed knuckles. You stand, brushing soot from your hands, and glance at the scullion. He's watching you, wide-eyed, waiting for a command or a cuff to the ear. You offer neither. Keep it steady, you say, your voice low and calm. Not too hot, not too cold. He nods, clutching the poker like a talisman. You smile to yourself, a flicker of dry amusement. He'll learn, or he'll burn something and learn faster. That's how it goes in the kitchen. The light is stronger now, painting the walls in shades of grey and gold. The kitchen feels alive, a creature waking from slumber. You hear the distant clatter of a bucket, the soft tread of a kitchen maid fetching water from the well. Soon the room will hum with activity, maids chopping, boys turning spits, you at the centre, orchestrating it all with a quiet word or a raised eyebrow. But for this moment it's just you and the fire, the scent of smoke and thyme, the promise of a day that's yours to shape. You take a deep breath, letting the weight of the morning settle. It's not an easy life, this one. Long hours, hot flames, the constant threat of a noble's displeasure. But there's a strange beauty in it too. You create something real, something warm, something that fills bellies and quiets complaints. In a world of swords and prayers, you wield a spoon and a skillet. And that, you think with a wry twist of your lips, is power enough. You stand in the kitchen, the hearth's faint warmth at your back, the air still tinged with the smoky promise of the fire you've just coaxed to life. The scullion is busy at his task, poking the embers with a stick, his face a study in concentration that might be admirable if it weren't so likely to end in a singed sleeve. You leave him to it, your mind already turning to the next step in your morning ritual. The pantry awaits, that shadowed sanctuary where the household's secrets and its survival are stored. You cross the stone floor, your footsteps soft, deliberate, as if not to wake the castle from its slumber. The pantry door, a heavy slab of oak banded with iron, creaks as you push it open, and you step into a world of quiet possibility. The pantry is a different beast from the kitchen. Where the kitchen is all heat and chaos, this room is cool, dim, and still, like a crypt for food. The air smells of earth and grain, with a faint, sharp note of vinegar from a barrel in the corner. Shelves line the walls, sagging under the weight of sacks and baskets, while barrels squat like silent sentinels. A small, locked chest sits on a high shelf, its contents more precious than gold. Spices, those tiny flecks of flavour that could buy a horse or a house. You've heard tales of saffron costing more than a knight's armour, of peppercorns traded like gems. You don't touch the chest, not yet. That's the steward's domain, and you've learned to tread carefully where his keys are concerned. You take stock, your eyes adjusting to the gloom. There's a sack of barley, its burlap worn thin from years of use. A smaller one of rye, lumpy and slightly damp, which makes you frown. Damp grain means mould, and mould means trouble. You make a mental note to use it soon, maybe in a pottage, before it turns into something only the pigs would eat. There's a basket of onions, most of them soft and sprouting, their papery skins littering the floor like fallen leaves. A barrel of salted fish, herring by the smell, sits in the corner, its lid askew. You lift it, peering inside. The fish are packed tight, their silvery bodies gleaming faintly in the dark. They're not fresh, but they'll do for the servants' table. The nobles, of course, will expect something grander. You move to the cheese, a wheel wrapped in cloth that's seen better days. You press it with your thumb, testing its give. It's hard, almost waxy, but not spoiled. Good enough for a morning platter, maybe paired with bread to appease the Lord's children, who seem to think cheese is a personality trait. There's a small jar of honey, a rare treat you'll save for a special dish, and a bundle of dried herbs, thyme, parsley, a bit of rosemary, that you'll use to coax flavour from whatever the hunters bring back. The steward promised venison, but you've learned to take his promises with a grain of salt, or rather, a pinch, since salt is another thing you're running low on. You pause, leaning against the oak table in the pantry's centre, and let the day's plan take shape in your mind. It's like sketching a map on a foggy morning, half guesswork, half instinct. Breakfast will be simple. Bread for everyone, ale for the servants, maybe some cheese and cold meat for the high table if you can stretch the supplies. The midday meal needs to be heartier, something to fuel the household through the afternoon's work. A pottage probably, thickened with barley and whatever vegetables you can salvage. And tonight, well, tonight is the real challenge. Whispers of a guest, a lord's cousin with a palate as fussy as his title, mean you'll need to pull out all the stops. A roast, perhaps, if the venison materialises. A pie, if you can scrounge enough flour and fat. And maybe, just maybe, a dish with a pinch of those precious spices if the steward can be persuaded. It's a delicate balance, this planning. Too plain, and the Lord will mutter about peasant slop, his voice carrying the kind of disdain that could cost you a week's wages. Too lavish, and the steward will descend like a hawk, his ledger clutched like a holy relic, accusing you of bankrupting the household. You've heard tales of cooks flogged for burning a roast, or serving a dish too cold for the lady's liking. You shake your head, a wry smile tugging at your lips. No pressure then, just another day feeding a castle full of people who think food appears by magic. You call out to the kitchen, your voice low but firm, summoning a kitchen maid. She appears, a girl with flour-dusted hands and a nervous smile, and you send her to fetch water from the well. Another maid, older and surlier, gets the task of grinding barley for bread. You'll handle the spices yourself if it comes to that, but first you need to inspect the fire. The scullion's efforts are, well, enthusiastic is a kind word. You step back into the kitchen, where the boy is still poking at the hearth, his face smudged with soot. "Easy, lad," you say, your tone as soft as the dawn. "You're not fighting a dragon, just keep it steady." He nods, his eyes wide, and you wonder if he's more afraid of the fire or of you. You kneel by the hearth, checking the flames. They're stronger now, licking at the logs with a hunger that mirrors your own. You add another piece of wood, adjusting it with the care of a jeweler setting a stone. The fire is your partner in this dance, but it's a fickle one. Too hot, and your carefully planned roast becomes a charred offering to the gods of waste. Too cool, and the bread won't rise, the pottage won't simmer, and the Lord's cousin will send his plate back with a sneer. You've learned to read the fire's moods, to know when it's ready to embrace a spit, or when it needs coaxing with kindling. It's a skill no one praises, but it's yours, hard won through years of sweat and smoke. You stand brushing soot from your apron and glance around the kitchen. The maids are moving now, their chatter a soft hum like bees in a garden. The scullion's still at the fire, turning the poker in his hands as if it might reveal the secrets of the universe, rumbling about peasant slop, his voice carrying the kind of disdain that could cost you a week's wages. Too lavish, and the steward will descend like a hawk, his ledger clutched like a holy relic, accusing you of bankrupting the household. You've heard tales of cooks flogged for burning a roast, or serving a dish too cold for the lady's liking. You shake your head, a wry smile tugging at your lips. No pressure then, just another day feeding a castle full of people who think food appears by magic. You call out to the kitchen, your voice low but firm, summoning a kitchen maid. She appears, a girl with flour-dusted hands and a nervous smile, and you send her to fetch water from the well. Another maid, older and surlier, gets the task of grinding barley for bread. You'll handle the spices yourself if it comes to that, but first you need to inspect the fire. The scullion's efforts are, well, enthusiastic is a kind word. You step back into the kitchen, where the boy is still poking at the hearth, his face smudged with soot. "Easy, lad," you say, your tone as soft as the dawn. "You're not fighting a dragon, just keep it steady." He nods, his eyes wide, and you wonder if he's more afraid of the fire or of you. You kneel by the hearth, checking the flames. They're stronger now, licking at the logs with a hunger that mirrors your own. You add another piece of wood, adjusting it with the care of a jeweler setting a stone. The fire is your partner in this dance, but it's a fickle one. Too hot, and your carefully planned roast becomes a charred offering to the gods of waste. Too cool, and the bread won't rise, the pottage won't simmer, and the Lord's cousin will send his plate back with a sneer. You've learned to read the fire's moods, to know when it's ready to embrace a spit or when it needs coaxing with kindling. It's a skill no one praises, but it's yours, hard won through years of sweat and smoke. You stand, brushing soot from your apron, and glance around the kitchen. The maids are moving now, their chatter a soft hum like bees in a garden. The scullion's still at the fire, turning the poker in his hands as if it might reveal the secrets of the universe. You let him be, your mind drifting back to the pantry, to the plan taking shape. You'll need to visit the steward soon, to barter for extra supplies or plead for access to that spice chest. It's a negotiation as delicate as balancing a souffle, and you're already rehearsing your arguments. A good cook is half artist, half diplomat, and you've had years to hone both skills. The pantry's inventory lingers in your thoughts. The barley, the onions, the questionable cheese. You'll make it work somehow. You always do. It's not just about feeding people. It's about weaving a kind of magic, turning the ordinary into something that warms, sustains, even delights. You're no knight, no scholar, no priest penning chronicles for kings. But in this pantry, with its sacks and barrels and locked away spices, you hold the power to shape the day, to feed the household, to keep the castle's heart beating. And that, you think with a flicker of dry amusement, is a legacy no one will ever write down, but everyone will taste. You stand by the hearth, the heart of the kitchen, where the fire now crackles with a steady golden glow. The morning's quiet has given way to a gentle hum of activity, a symphony of soft clinks and murmurs as the kitchen maids chop onions and knead dough. The scullion, bless his sooty soul, has managed not to set himself alight, and the flames are behaving, for now. You adjust a log with the poker, watching the sparks dance upward like fleeting dreams, and let the warmth seep into your hands. This fire is your domain, your muse, your eternal adversary. It's the alchemy that turns raw meat into feasts and grain into bread, but it's also a fickle beast, ready to ruin your day if you blink too long. Welcome to the dance of the medieval kitchen, where you, the cook, are both conductor and combatant. The pantry's inventory is still fresh in your mind: barley, wilted onions, a questionable wheel of cheese, and the faint hope of venison if the steward keeps his word. You've sketched a plan: a simple breakfast of bread and ale, a midday pottage to warm the household, and for tonight, a feast to impress the Lord's fussy cousin, who's rumoured to have a palate as sharp as his tongue. The centrepiece will be a roasted boar, stuffed with apples and herbs, a dish as grand as it is risky. Boar is temperamental. It's meat prone to toughness if you misjudge the heat, and apples can turn to mush if you're not careful. Alongside it, you'll serve a lentil pottage, a loaf of manchet bread for the nobles, and, if the stars align, a fruit tart with those wrinkled plums you found. The servants will get barley soup and yesterday's fish. Nothing goes to waste here, not in a world where famine is a guest who never RSVPs. You turn from the fire, your apron already dusted with soot, and survey the kitchen. The maids are moving with purpose now, their knives flashing in the firelight as they slice leeks and carrots. The scullion, still stationed at the hearth, looks like he's praying the flames don't turn on him. You call over a kitchen boy, a lanky lad with hands too big for his body, and point to the spit, a heavy iron rod leaning against the wall. "Get the boar ready," you say, your voice low and calm, like a breeze through a meadow. He nods, scurrying to the pantry where the butcher's already dressed the beast. You're grateful for that. Wrestling a carcass is a job for someone with more patience and fewer pots to stir. The boar arrives, its skin pale and glistening, and you set to work. You rub it with salt, the grains rough against your palms, and crush rosemary between your fingers, releasing a scent that's sharp and green, like a forest after rain. The apples are your next challenge. They're not as fresh as you'd like, their skin's soft and speckled, but you slice them thin, layering them inside the boar's cavity with more rosemary and a pinch of thyme. It's a gamble, this stuffing. Too much moisture, and the meat will steam instead of roast. Too little, and it'll dry out, leaving the Lord's cousin to complain about chewing leather. You tie the boar shut with twine, your knots precise, and heft it onto the spit. The kitchen boy, now your unofficial spit turner, takes his place by the fire, his face a mask of determination. "Slow and steady," you tell him. "Rush, and we'll be serving charcoal." He nods, gripping the handle like it's a sword. As the boar begins its slow rotation, its fat hissing into the flames, you turn to the pottage. It's a humble dish, lentils, leeks, a bit of garlic, but it's the backbone of the meal, the kind of thing that fills bellies and quiets grumbling. You pour lentils into a cauldron, they rattle like pebbles in a stream, and add water from the well. The leeks go next, their pale rings floating like moons in the broth. You crush a clove of garlic with the flat of your knife, its pungent bite cutting through the kitchen's smoky haze, and toss it in. A pinch of salt, a sprig of parsley, and the pot's ready for the fire. You hang it from a hook, adjusting its height so it simmers, not boils. Pottage is forgiving, but only to a point. Too thin, and it's slop. Too thick, and it's glue. You've walked this tightrope before, and you trust your instincts. The bread is next, a task that's equal parts craft and prayer. The flour is coarse, a mix of rye and barley that's more grit than silk, but it's what you have. You knead the dough on the table, your hands sinking into its cool, elastic mass, the rhythm soothing, almost meditative. The oven, a clay dome built into the wall, is temperamental, its heat as unpredictable as the Lord's mood. You stoke its fire, watching the flames curl inside, and slide the dough onto a wooden peel. The loaf is heavy, scored with a cross to ward off evil, or maybe just to help it bake evenly. You ease it onto the hot stone, the oven's heat a blast against your face, and close the door. The smell of baking bread begins to rise, a warm, yeasty promise that makes your stomach rumble. You smile, a flicker of dry humour surfacing. If only you could eat as well as you cook. You step back, wiping sweat from your brow, and take a moment to breathe. The kitchen is a living thing now, alive with heat and motion. The boar sizzles, the pottage bubbles, the bread bakes, and the maid's chatter weaves through it all like a soft lullaby. You glance at the scullion, who's managed to keep the fire steady, and give him a nod. He beams, unaware that his shirt is now smudged with ash. The kitchen boy turns the spit, his rhythm slow, almost trance-like. You're tempted to tell him he's doing well, but praise is a dangerous thing. He might get cocky, and you've got no time for that. The feast is taking shape, but it's not without its ghosts. You're haunted by the memory of a pie you once burned so badly the Lord thought it was a prank. The guests' polite coughs masking their horror. You've learned since then, honed your timing, your senses sharpened by years of trial and flame. But the fear lingers, a quiet whisper that one misstep could turn this feast into a disaster. You push it aside, focusing on the fire. It's your ally now, its heat a steady pulse beneath the chaos. You adjust a log, watching the flames flare briefly, and let the warmth ground you. The irony of your role isn't lost on you. Here you are, orchestrating a banquet that'll be sung about in the hall, while you'll likely eat a crust of bread and a bowl of pottage in the shadows. The nobles will feast, the minstrels will sing, and you'll be forgotten. But that's the life you've chosen, or the life that chose you. You're a cook, a weaver of flavours, a tamer of fires. And as the boar roasts, the pottage simmers, and the bread rises, you feel a quiet pride. This is your art, your battlefield, your legacy. Let the lords have their glory. You've got a feast to make. The kitchen is a warm, fragrant cocoon now, the hearth's fire casting flickering shadows across the stone walls. The boar sizzles on its spit, its skin turning a rich golden brown, while the lentil pottage bubbles gently, sending up tendrils of steam that carry the earthy scent of leeks and garlic. The manchet bread, fresh from the oven, sits on the scarred oak table, its crust cracked and inviting, like a secret waiting to be shared. You've even managed a fruit tart, those wrinkled plums transformed into something almost elegant with a drizzle of honey and a prayer. The feast is nearly ready, a delicate house of cards built from your skill and a touch of stubborn hope. You wipe your hands on your apron, the fabric now a canvas of soot and flour, and take a deep breath. It's time to send your creations to the nobles' table, where they'll be judged by palates as fickle as the spring weather. You glance at the kitchen boy, still turning the spit with the solemn focus of a monk at prayer. He's done well, though you won't tell him so. Not yet. Compliments make young hands careless, and you've got no time for mistakes. The maids are bustling, their movements quick but quiet, a practiced dance of trays and platters. You call over the head serving girl, a sharp-eyed lass named Agnes, who knows the hall's politics better than most knights. The boar first, you tell her, your voice low, steady, like a lullaby for the chaos. Then the pheasants, the pottage, the bread. Tart last if they're still hungry. She nods, her lips twitching in what might be a smile. She's seen feasts go wrong before, spilled wine, cold soup, a lord's cousin who once sent back a pie because it lacked ambition. You both know the stakes. The boar is your centerpiece, and you approach it like a sculptor unveiling a statue. You ease it off the spit, the meat heavy and fragrant, its stuffing of apples and herbs peeking through like a well-kept secret. You carve it with a knife so sharp it could slice through a noble's ego, your hands steady despite the weight of the day. The slices fall away, revealing meat that's tender, just shy of pink, with a glaze of fat that catches the firelight. You arrange it on a pewter platter, garnishing it with sprigs of parsley, fresh from the garden, a rare victory in this lean season. The pheasants, a last-minute addition for the lord's cousin who scorns pork, are next. You glaze them with honey, their skins crisp and golden, and nestle them among more parsley. The irony isn't lost on you. Hours of work, days of planning, and it all comes down to a sprig of green to make it fancy. The pottage is ladled into a tureen, its surface shimmering with a sheen of fat that you know will please the servants, if not the nobles. The manchet bread, soft and white for the high table, is sliced thick, its crust crackling under your knife. The coarser barley bread for the lower tables waits in baskets, unassuming but honest. The tart, your quiet triumph, sits on a wooden board, its plums glistening like jewels under their honey glaze. You step back, surveying the spread. It's not perfect. The apples in the boar are a touch too soft. The pottage could use more salt. But it's yours, and it's good. You nod to Agnes, who gathers the servants like a general marshalling troops. The platters are lifted, the tureen hoisted, and the procession begins. You follow them to the kitchen doorway, staying just out of sight as they enter the great hall. The hall is a world apart from your smoky kingdom. Its high ceilings are lost in shadow, its walls hung with tapestries that cost more than you'll earn in a lifetime. The long tables are set with linen, candles flickering like stars in a stone sky. The nobles are there, their voices a low hum of laughter and gossip, their clothes a riot of colour, velvet, silk, and fur that make your woolen tunic feel like a penance. The lord sits at the head, his face ruddy from wine, his wife beside him, her smile as sharp as a blade. The cousin, the one you've been warned about, lounges in a carved chair, his expression suggesting he's already decided the meal will disappoint. You stifle a wry chuckle. Let him try to cook a boar over an open fire with half an onion and a prayer. The servants move with practiced grace, placing the platters before the high table first. The boar is met with murmurs of approval, though you know better than to trust them. Nobles are as changeable as the wind, one moment praising your work, the next complaining the meat's too tough or the sauce too bold. The pheasants follow, their honeyed sheen catching the candlelight, and you catch a fleeting nod from the lord's wife. High praise in its way. The pottage is served to the lower tables, where knights and retainers dig in with less ceremony, their spoons clinking against wooden bowls. The bread is passed, the tart placed discreetly at the end, a quiet hope that it'll be savoured rather than ignored. You linger in the doorway, half hidden by a pillar, watching the scene unfold. It's a strange thing, this moment. You've poured your day into this meal, your hands shaping every bite, yet you're a ghost here. The nobles eat, laugh, argue over land or love or some knight's latest folly, and your name never crosses their lips. You're not bitter, not exactly. It's the way of things. But there's a quiet pride in knowing that this hall, this fleeting moment of warmth and plenty, exists because of you. The boar's juices glisten on a noble's knife. The pottage warms a squire's belly. The bread disappears into eager hands. You've done your part, and it's enough. The cousin, predictably, is the wild card. You see him poke at the pheasant, his face a mask of skepticism, as if the bird might confess to some culinary sin. He takes a bite, chews slowly, and, miracle of miracles, doesn't grimace. You exhale, a tension you didn't know you were holding slipping away. Agnes catches your eye from across the hall, her expression saying what words can't. We pulled it off. You nod back, a silent agreement that you'll celebrate later with a cup of ale and a crust of bread, the cook's humble reward. The hall hums on, the candles burning lower, the voices growing louder with wine and satisfaction. You turn back to the kitchen, leaving the nobles to their revelry. The fire still burns, the pots still need scrubbing, and tomorrow's menu is already tugging at your thoughts. But for now, you let the moment linger. The scent of roasted meat, the warmth of the hearth, the quiet knowledge that you've fed a household from lord to scullion and kept the world turning for another day. It's not glory, not in the way the bards sing of, but it's yours, and it's real. The kitchen is quiet now, a soft, weary hush settling over the stone walls like a blanket. The fire in the hearth has calmed to a low glow, its crackle subdued, as if it too is exhausted from the day's labour. The air still carries the ghosts of the feast: roasted boar, honey-glazed pheasant, the earthy warmth of lentil pottage, and the sweet tang of that improbable plum tart. You stand by the oak table, its surface a battlefield of crumbs, grease, and a stray parsley sprig, and feel the weight of the day ease from your shoulders. The noble's table is empty now, the great hall silent save for the distant echo of a minstrel's lute or a servant's footsteps. The feast is over, and you, the unseen architect of it all, are left to tend the aftermath. You wipe your hands on your apron, now a patchwork of soot, flour, and something that might be apple juice, and survey the kitchen. The platters have returned, most of them scraped clean, a silent compliment from the hall, though you'll never hear it spoken. The boar, your gamble of the evening, is reduced to a few bones and scraps, enough for the servant's supper tomorrow. The pheasants, that last-minute concession to the lord's fussy cousin, are gone, save for a wing or two that you'll tuck into a pottage for the scullions. The manchet bread, that soft white luxury for the high table, has vanished, while the barley loaves for the lower tables are half-eaten, their crusts hardening in the cool air. Even the tart, your quiet triumph, is little more than a memory, its wooden board returned with a few sticky traces of honey. You smile, a flicker of dry amusement. Success in this kitchen is measured in empty plates and the absence of complaints. Agnes, the sharp-eyed serving girl, slips back into the kitchen, her tray empty and her face weary but satisfied. The cousin liked the pheasant, she says, her voice low, as if sharing a secret. Called it adequate, which for him is practically a ballad. You chuckle softly, the sound blending with the fire's murmur. Adequate. In the world of nobles, where a single misplaced spice can spark a feud, adequate is a victory. You nod to Agnes, who sets the tray by the table and begins stacking pots for washing. The other maids are already at it, their hands moving through the greasy water with the rhythm of a lullaby, their chatter a soft hum of gossip and fatigue. You don't join in. Your work isn't done yet, but for now you let the quiet wrap around you like a cloak. You cross to the hearth, where the scullion is slumped, his poker forgotten in his lap. His face is smudged with soot, his eyes half closed, and you can't help but feel a pang of fondness. He's worked hard today, even if his enthusiasm outstripped his skill. Off to bed, lad, you say, your voice gentle, like a breeze stirring leaves. He blinks, startled, then scrambles to his feet, mumbling something that might be gratitude or exhaustion. You pat his shoulder, sending him off to his pallet in the corner of the servants' quarters. He'll dream of fires and spits, you think, and maybe one day he'll stand where you do, orchestrating a kitchen with a steady hand and a wary eye. The table needs clearing, and you set to it, scraping crumbs and grease into a bucket for the pigs. Nothing goes to waste here. Not food, not time, not even the scraps of your patience. You gather the bones from the boar, setting them aside for a broth. The pheasant wings go into a small pot, destined for a soup that'll feed the kitchen staff. You're already planning tomorrow's meals, your mind a ledger of possibilities. A pottage with those bones, maybe a fish pie if the river yields anything worthwhile, or another loaf of bread if the flour holds out. The pantry is lean, the harvest leaner, and the steward's promises as reliable as a summer storm. But you'll make it work. You always do. You pause, leaning against the table, and take a sip from a cup of weak ale you poured earlier. It's warm now, flat, but it's a small comfort, a moment to breathe in a day that's been all motion. The ale tastes of barley and regret, but it's yours, and that's enough. You glance at the hearth, where the embers pulse like a heartbeat, and let your thoughts drift. The feast was a success, by the standards of a cook. No one stormed into the kitchen to complain, no plates were sent back, and the cousin's adequate is a tale you'll retell with a smirk for weeks. But there's no glory in it, not really. The nobles are upstairs, toasting their own importance, while you're here, scrubbing tables and planning tomorrow's pottage. It's a strange irony, isn't it? You feed the castle, keep its heart beating, and yet you're as invisible as the smoke curling up the chimney. You think back to a feast years ago, when you were still an undercook, green and nervous, and you burned a pie so badly the Lord's guests thought it was a jest. The head cook, a grizzled woman with a tongue sharper than her knives, had laughed it off, but you'd felt the sting of failure for weeks. You've learned since then, learned to trust your hands, your nose, the way the fire speaks in pops and hisses. You've learned to navigate the household's politics, how to charm the steward for an extra sack of flour, how to placate a maid who's spilled the pottage, how to keep a scullion from setting the kitchen ablaze. You're good at this, even if no one says it aloud. The empty platters are proof enough. The maids are nearly done now, their voices fading as they finish the pots and stack them by the hearth. You send them off with a nod, their footsteps fading into the night. The kitchen is yours again, a quiet kingdom of embers and shadows. You bank the fire, piling ash over the coals to keep them alive for morning. The air is cooler now, carrying the faint scent of rain through the narrow window. You wrap your cloak around you, its wool rough but familiar, and take one last look at the room. The table is clean, the pots gleam faintly, and the hearth glows like a promise of tomorrow's work. You head to your small room off the kitchen, a closet of stone with a straw mattress and a wooden chest. It's not much, but it's yours, a sanctuary carved from the chaos of the day. You lie down, the straw rustling beneath you, and listen to the distant hoot of an owl. The castle sleeps, its belly full, its fires low. Tomorrow will bring another dance of flames and flavours, another round of coaxing miracles from a lean pantry. But for now, you close your eyes, letting the quiet take you. The aftermath is yours, a moment of peace, earned by your hands, savoured in the dark. And so, dear listener, you drift away from the medieval kitchen, leaving behind the scent of bread and the crackle of the hearth. You've walked a day in the life of a cook, a quiet hero of the noble household. It's a strange life, isn't it? Full of small triumphs and smaller disasters, all woven into the tapestry of history. If you enjoyed this journey, maybe leave a like or subscribe, but only if you're still awake. For now, let the embers fade, let the night take you. Sleep well and dream of warm bread and flickering fires.